The drone of the engines was supposed to be soothing. That steady wash of sound that tells your brain, relax, we're in the air. But the moment I stepped onto Flight 482, I knew peace wasn't in the cards. I slid into my window seat, my aisle neighbor already settled beside me, earbuds in and ready to tune out. And then she arrived. She didn't stroll down the aisle. She barreled through it. A woman radiating the kind of overblown confidence that practically shouts entitlement. Her hair was styled so flawlessly it looked like even physics refused to disturb it, and her eyes scanned every passenger like she was evaluating who was unworthy. "Excuse me," she barked, her voice sharp enough to slice straight through the engine hum. "I need to speak to a manager. Now!" A flight attendant, young, maybe 25 at most, and probably facing her first ever level 10 entitled passenger, approached with a polite smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help?" "I want a manager." "Not you," the woman cut in, dismissing her with a flick of a manicured wrist. "A manager of the sky." I bit my lip so hard trying not to laugh that I nearly drew blood. Manager of the sky? Seriously? The flight attendant blinked, looking for a split second like she wished the intercom would swallow her whole. I'm afraid we don't really." "Not a stewardess. A manager," the woman repeated, louder this time. The kind of volume reserved for life-or-death situations, not airline theatrics. Her voice bounced off the overhead bins like a ricocheting alarm. People lifted their heads from their phones, some pretending not to notice, others recoiling like she carried a contagious ego. I felt my own chest tighten, the tension climbing like cabin pressure gone wrong. A businessman 3 rows back muttered, "Wow, she's good." I honestly didn't know if he meant good at creating chaos or good at demanding managerial intervention. Then came the moment straight out of a movie. The flight attendant exhaled, tilted her head, and murmured something to another crew member. I caught the faintest whisper, "Captain." My stomach dropped. Oh no, this wasn't about peanuts or a missing pillow. This was the kind of escalation that fuels entire airline rant compilations. The woman scanned the cabin like a general surveying enemy troops, oblivious to the sea of eye rolls forming around her. "Do you hear me? I said I want a manager. Right now. Who is in charge of this plane?" I gripped the armrest, torn between filming her or bracing for turbulence, figurative but guaranteed. The cabin collectively held its breath. Then the flight attendant slipped into the cockpit. And just like that, everyone knew something massive and painfully awkward was about to unfold. The bins clicked shut behind her, and a hush swept over the cabin. Everyone leaned forward without moving, drawn into the spectacle as if by gravity. I could feel dozens of eyes flick toward me, as if waiting to see whether I'd join in or keep quietly observing the meltdown brewing. Time stretched out, seconds elongating like pulled taffy. The woman stood tall, analyzing every inch of the plane as though she owned equity in it. She clutched her designer purse with one hand and planted the other firmly on her hip like a monument to superiority. I refuse to fly under these circumstances. Someone is in charge, and I will speak to them. A wave of murmured reactions rippled down the aisle, half amusement, half dread. I had to fight back a grin. It was too absurd, too cinematic. Then the cockpit door cracked open. A man stepped out calmly, moving with practiced serenity like he'd meditated specifically for this showdown. Captain Reynolds, mid-50s, silver hair, aviator shades, and a voice engineered command attention without raising the volume. "Hello, ma'am. I understand there's concern." His tone was even professional, but carried enough quiet authority to make her jaw tighten instantly. "I want a manager," she barked again. "I need someone who can control this plane." A collective groan rippled through the cabin. This was no longer petty. It was spiraling into the realm of the unbelievable. The captain, impossibly patient, inclined his head. "I am the captain. I am in charge of this plane." Silence. Then her face contorted in disbelief, like she just discovered her favorite bakery, replaced everything with kale. "You're the manager?" "Yes," he answered calmly. "I'm Captain Reynolds. How can I assist you?" The flight attendant hovered behind him like a polite bodyguard, while passengers traded knowing glances. The tension was thick enough to cut with a beverage cart. Everyone knew this was a moment she'd either combust or collapse under the weight of reality. But collapse? Not her. She lifted her chin, shoulders squared, and with theatrical flair worthy of Shakespeare declared, "I cannot fly under these conditions. I need assurances. I need—" But before she could finish, the plane jerked with a pocket of turbulence, rattling the entire cabin. Drinks wobbled. Phones slid off trays, and all that pent-up tension erupted into movement. Everyone braced, not just for the bump, but for the entitlement storm about to break loose. Then she muttered, loud enough for me to hear, "This is going to be worse than I thought." The captain's calm seemed to provoke her even more. I could see it plainly. Every measured smile felt like an attack on her imaginary authority. Every steady word was a challenge she refused to lose. She folded her arms, tapped her foot, and pinned the flight attendant with a... She fixed the flight attendant with a glare so intense it looked like it could scorch metal. "Do you know how many times I've flown first class?" she demanded, her voice climbing again, dripping with the kind of indignation that made me wince. "I expect the utmost respect." I sank farther into my seat, exhaling slowly as the absurdity piled higher. Around us, passengers maintained their facade of disinterest, but the sidelong glances gave them away. They were absolutely watching. A toddler 3 rows up let out a giggle, breaking the tension for a split second like a tiny bubble rising in a boiling pot. The captain, utterly unshakable, answered evenly, "Ma'am, I'd be happy to address any safety concerns you may have. However, this plane is under my command, and all passengers are expected to follow standard procedures." She let out a dramatic gasp. "Command? You think you command me? I paid for this ticket." Somewhere behind me, a man whispered, "Ah, yes, the great equalizer, turbulence and entitlement." I almost snorted, but the plane lurched at that exact moment, sending trays rattling and a rogue soda can rolling down the aisle like a tiny metallic protest sign. The flight attendant, balancing politeness and pure exhaustion, stepped in closer. "Ma'am, if you have questions about the flight, I can relay them to the captain, but we do need you to remain seated for safety." "Seated?" she echoed, scandalized. "Seated is not acceptable. I demand to stand. I demand answers. I demand—" The captain lifted a hand gently. "Ma'am, for your safety and the safety of everyone on this aircraft, standing during takeoff and turbulence is not permitted. You may speak with me calmly while remaining seated." She stared at him as if he'd insulted her entire family tree. I could practically hear the gears grinding in her mind. How dare he tell me what to do on a plane I paid to enter? And then, with perfect cinematic timing, the seatbelt sign chimed on. The plane dipped, the wings trembled, and a harsh rattle shivered through the fuselage. Her eyes widened as her manicured nails drummed frantically on the armrest. "I cannot believe this. This is unsafe. I demand." Right then, a quiet click echoed from the row behind me. Someone had started recording. She froze instantly, snapping her head toward the camera like a deer caught in headlights. That tiny pause, that half-second of stunned hesitation, felt heavier than the turbulence itself. And then she did the unthinkable. She stood up. Anyway, the cabin rippled with murmurs, half disbelief, half morbid entertainment, as she rose defiantly, ignoring the glowing seatbelt sign screaming at her. I gripped my armrest so tightly my knuckles turned white, feeling every bump and shake punctuate the chaos she was creating. The flight attendant hovered a few feet away, her voice calm but strained, like someone delivering instructions to an oncoming weather disaster. "Ma'am, please return to your seat. For your safety and for everyone else's, you must sit down," she repeated, each word landing heavier than the last. "Safety?" the woman barked, spinning to face the entire cabin. "I've flown more miles than anyone here, and no one tells me I cannot stand and express my concerns." The captain remained at the front, head slightly tilted, his expression that unnerving blend of calm and relentless patience. Watching him was almost frustrating. His quiet composure threw her theatrics into even sharper contrast. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm here to address any concerns, but the rules are not optional." Her eyes flicked back to him, storm clouds gathering. And then, unbelievably, She leaned forward, as though she were about to unleash the kind of revelation she thought would shake the entire aviation industry. "I demand a full explanation of cabin pressure," she announced, her voice rising, pulling even more attention toward the unfolding spectacle. Passengers whispered excitedly, some recording, others trying not to laugh. A young man across the aisle muttered, "Didn't know airlines offered live entertainment." The flight attendant, visibly swallowing a sigh powerful enough to crack glass, leaned toward the captain. He gave a tiny nod, barely perceptible like a secret signal, and that was all she needed. "I can explain, ma'am," Captain Reynolds said, stepping forward and lowering his voice just enough that the entire cabin leaned in to hear. "Cabin pressure is constantly monitored and maintained at safe levels. The air is—" The captain continued, "steady as ever. Airflow is circulated, filtered, and constantly adjusted. Everything is well within safety parameters, ma'am. What isn't safe is standing during turbulence." But her lips trembled, not with fear, but pure indignation. "Well within parameters?" she snapped. "This is absurd. I want documentation. I want someone who can actually—" And then it happened. A violent jolt hit the cabin. A sudden, angry burst of turbulence shook the entire plane. Drinks sloshed. A magazine shot off someone's lap like a rogue frisbee. For one dizzying moment, the world tilted sideways. She grabbed the overhead handle, wobbling, eyes blown wide as the plane dipped again. That's when it struck me. This wasn't an argument anymore. This was a full-scale, in-flight showdown. Karen, the self-declared ruler of the skies, squared off against the captain like some high-altitude duel. And then she pointed at him. She actually pointed at the captain like she was delivering a verdict in front of an invisible courthouse jury. You are responsible for this entire plane." Her voice cracked through the cabin like a gavel slamming. Everything fell silent. Even the engine seemed to pause, waiting. Captain Reynolds inhaled slowly, his calm now so flawless it felt theatrical. "Yes, ma'am. I am responsible for this aircraft and for the safety of everyone on board. I am the captain." She stared, jaw clenched, nostrils flaring like someone had just told her the sky didn't belong to her after all. Then came the line none of us would ever forget. "I demand a formal report. I want the manager of the sky." I nearly choked. The manager of the sky was one thing. Her complete disconnect from the concept of aviation was another. Around me, passengers shifted, quietly preparing for either a meltdown or a miracle. The flight attendant, who clearly longed to quit her job and teleport to a beach, leaned in sympathetically. "Ma'am, the captain is a manager. He oversees all operations in the sky. There is no higher authority on this aircraft." Her eyes bulged. "He is the manager?" "Yes, ma'am," the captain confirmed gently. His voice held the weight of a man who had flown millions of passengers and still somehow had patience left. She sputtered, mind visibly scrambling for any loophole. But what if the sky needed a higher manager? Passengers exchanged glances. Someone rolled their eyes so hard, I swear, I heard it click. The air between us crackled, tense, ridiculous, electric. The plane jolted again, another round of turbulence tossing cups and magazines like confetti. And then, in a moment so dramatic it could have had a soundtrack, she looked back at the cabin, lips trembling like she was about to give a speech future historians would analyze. "I will not accept this unless I speak to someone who holds true authority over the sky itself." Right then, Captain Reynolds, saintly patience intact, raised an eyebrow, a ghost of a smile hidden beneath it. "Ma'am," he said, "that someone is me." She froze completely, realizing she'd been challenging the manager of the sky, who'd been standing in front of her this entire time, calm, unshakable, and absolutely unfazed. The cabin breathed again as one. My seatmate whispered, "This is better than Netflix." But Karen? She wasn't done. Not even close. She straightened her shoulders and delivered a new declaration that made my stomach drop. "I will not step down until I have written confirmation from the manager of the sky." Now the plane had become a stage, and we were trapped in her airborne performance. She stood there, arms crossed, determined to bend gravity through stubbornness alone. I clung to my armrest like a life preserver, equal parts horrified and captivated. Captain Reynolds remained a picture of calm, adjusting his glasses with disarming politeness. "Ma'am, I could provide a written statement if it will reassure you, but it will say exactly what I've already stated. I am responsible for the airplane, and all safety measures are being followed." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked like she was rehearsing for a theatrical monologue. Turbulence rattled through in perfect harmony with her internal chaos. She muttered about legal rights and aviation regulations, and I suddenly wondered if she believed pilots carried around legal stamps and contract forms in their uniform pockets. The flight attendant approached with a clipboard and pen, like someone carefully handing a dentist tools while performing surgery during an earthquake. "Here, ma'am. The captain will sign this for you." Karen snatched it, scribbling furiously, whispering intense commentary under her breath about authority and cosmic injustice. Everyone watched in dead silence. There was tension, yes, but also an odd sense of admiration for her sheer persistence. Finally, she lifted the clipboard triumphantly. "There, proof. The manager of the sky has acknowledged my concerns." Captain Reynolds raised an eyebrow, the corners of his mouth barely resisting a smirk. "Yes, ma'am. That is exactly what it states." For a second, the cabin held its breath. Then she exhaled with the drama of an opera singer finishing her finale. The fire in her eyes dimmed, replaced with something approaching satisfaction. She sat down with the smugness of someone who believed she had conquered the heavens themselves, when all she had done was force 30 strangers and one exhausted captain into a live-action sky tribunal. The rest of the flight finally settled into something resembling peace. Passengers returned to their snacks and screens. The flight attendant melted into her jump seat, releasing a sigh so heavy I'm sure it caused more turbulence than the weather. Karen stared out the window, clutching her clipboard like a sacred artifact. Whether she felt victorious, enlightened, or simply worn out, one thing was certain. She had fully embraced her title as self-appointed manager of the sky, and we had all witnessed the spectacle. When the wheels touched the ground, the applause came instantly and involuntarily. Not for her, not even for the captain, but for all of us who survived the middle seat of chaos. If you felt the tension in this story, hit like, because every voice matters when ordinary people push back. Subscribe to Karen's Hub for every unbelievable moment real people take a stand. And tell me, how would you handle a situation like this?